Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I think we're going to start immediately. There will probably more people coming in. I just want to welcome you all. Good day, everyone. Thank you for being here with us again, or maybe you're new here at our Shamans Directory live community event. I am Mayumi Beckers. I'm from the Netherlands, and I am one of the founding members of Shamans Directory. And it's my absolutely like a great honor to be your host at one of our Shamans Directory live events. And it's really great to share this special time here together. And I also want to say, like what I always do, is that you are always welcome to share your name in the chat and or say hello there and let us know where you're tuning in from. And I'm also really thrilled about our topic for today, which is called Plant Spirits and Wellness. And it's very dear to my heart and it's going to be rich. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm also very honored to welcome our guest, John MacKinnon, also known as Crow. And before we begin, I want to briefly introduce ourselves at Shamans Directory, who we are. We are a non-profit global online platform dedicated to making shamanic earth-based services accessible to anyone seeking guidance and support on their path of transformation. And our vision is to unite medicine men and women from around the world, including original peoples, First Nation healers, and modern day lineage trained shamanic practitioners, in order to really create a safe space here to share shamanic earth based wisdom, medicine, healings, and teachings. And aside from our online platform, we also host twice monthly live events like these to really gather virtually around a fire. And through these offerings, we hope to inspire you to explore or deepen your connection to shamanic earth based medicine and wisdom ways, and also to integrate shamanic practices into your daily life. And we also, of course, want to warmly invite you to visit our website at shamansdirectory.com to learn more and where you can find resources and events and other beautiful things. And you can also join there our global community. By signing up to our newsletter, you will always stay informed about any of our upcoming events, as well as by following us on social media through Instagram and Facebook. So you will know any of the offerings that are, yeah, offered from a greater shamanic community around the world. I also want to say upfront here that we don't do live Q&A sessions during our talk here today, but we will have some time allowed at the end of our session. So please, feel welcome to write in any of your comments or questions in the chat, and we hope to get through them today as well. And for those of you who do not know Crow, or at least not yet, please allow me to introduce him. And so you know a little bit more about him and his background. Crow is the founder of Shamanic Voyages, a nonprofit organization offering educational travel experiences to places where shamanism remains a living tradition. Involved in shamanism since the mid 70s, he has worked with shamans and medicine people from North, Central, and South America, as well as Asia. Crow is an Amazonian trained curandero, a Harner shamanic counselor, and a graduate of advanced trainings offered by the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. In addition to serving as an ambassador for Shamans Directory, he is active in other global initiatives such as Sacred Earth Activism and the Pachamama Alliance. And the lineage where he received most consistent training is rooted in the Amazonian tradition through the line of Don Viejo Ribas, Don Agustin Ribas Vasquez, and Don Ramone Sanchez Rojas, which is a lineage of Shipibo origin from the Ucayali region of Peru. Outside the Amazon, his teachings draws primarily from core shamanism, influenced by a wide array of shamanic cultures and initiations. When he's not traveling with Shamanic Voyages, Crow offers shamanic counseling, presents workshops on core shamanic journeying, and teaches the crafting of shamanic tools. He also contributes articles to Indie Shaman magazine. So I just want to let you all know that we have quite some things to cover here today, and it's really exciting. And we will do our best to stay in our 2 hour time frame. But I just want to say a little bit up front here that to honor your time, just know that the video will be also posted on YouTube, so you can also return to that if you might miss any of our talk here today. So I want to, yeah, warmly welcome you, Crow, here. It's my absolute honor to have you here with us. And our topic for today is Plant Spirits and Medicine, Indigenous Wisdom Meets Modern Medicine. Welcome, Crow.
Thank you, Mayumi. So,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
it's a good topic. Um, the I guess I'll start with giving you a little bit of background about how I got where I am now. Um, from a very early age, I was interested in herbal medicine, natural remedies to things, and that kind of naturally led me to a lot of interest in indigenous cultures as well. And there had always been murmuring in our family about having indigenous roots here in North America. So I read on the subject and so forth, and eventually, when I was in college, decided that I would go to New Mexico, which was close to where one of my ancestors was from, and I briefly taught at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And that was the first time I really had an opportunity to meet with and become comfortable with natives from tribes all over the country. Actually, the institute is open to all tribal members. So that really sparked a deeper interest in reading and taking part in things like powwows and just making it a real avocation. And before too long, I really made it part of my daily practice to do sweat lodges, to drum, and to really kind of groom my understanding of the world around me through the lens of uh, indigenous worldviews. At jumping ahead to the early 1990s, I had a sweat lodge in Nantucket where I lived at the time, and I had a weekly sweat with a group of men every Thursday night, and we really put a lot into this, and we shared a lot of things that we found of interest. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody came up with a workshop that was happening in Boston. So we decided we would go to the workshop, and it was Michael Harner, and we really didn't know who he was, but he it was his, well, and it's called Way of the Shaman. It was the basic introductory workshop that he offered about shamanic journeying. Now, we didn't know a whole lot about him, but in preparation, we read his book, Way of the Shaman, and we learned some practical skills about journeying, which we weren't familiar with. And we also got some of his background through that book, which I explored more deeply in the coming years. Um, but what is pertinent to plant spirit medicine is that there was a reference made of Mr. Harder being exposed to ayahuasca when he was doing field work with the Jivaro people in the Ecuador, Colombia, Peruvian region. And that, although he concentrated primarily on sonic driving or drumming to reach a trance state, he began with that experience of ayahuasca. Now, one of the gentlemen that came to the sweats regularly, who eventually became my brother-in-law and best friend for many years, he was very interested in having an ayahuasca experience himself. So he tried to track down references, and he ran across another book by Alberto Villoldo called Dance of the Four Winds. And in that book, some Peruvian shamans were mentioned by name. So he tried to locate them. And this is all before the internet. So he put some work into this. He eventually located Don Ramon Sanchez, who taught Alberto Villoldo for a time in Pucallpa. Don Ramon was in his late 90s at that point and no longer pouring ceremonies. He was pretty much in his retirement, in his declining years. But his another one of his students, Don Agustin Rivas Vasquez, was still pouring ceremonies, and he also was welcoming groups to come and study with him from time to time. So my friend Rob uh, found a group that was going to visit Don Agustin. He went and he came back with enthusiasm that was just dripping. He said, "You have to come." So it didn't take a whole lot of convincing for the rest of us, and we gathered together not just the men in the sweat, but also a number of other people in Nantucket that were interested. And there were a few others from other parts of the country that joined us, and we made a group of about 15 altogether. We went to work with Don Augustine for a couple of weeks, and it was a peak experience of my life. It was truly life changing. I'll go into more detail about that in a little bit, but before I left, I knew that what I got there from that experience was something that I would love to share with other people. And it was when the seeds for shamanic voyages were first planted. It took many years before it came to fruition, but when you have an experience that is that positive and that life changing, it's hard not to want to share it. So that's how that began. In the ensuing years, I would go back and forth. Sometimes I would take other people with me. Um, I went one time for a fairly lengthy period just by myself to work with Don Augustine in the Pucallpa area. And at that point in time, I became very friendly with his son, who now goes by the name of Viejo. He was first introduced as Augustine Jr., but then when other people talked to him, they all called him Viejo, which in Spanish means old man, basically. And he was younger than me. And when I first met him, I was still in my late 30s. But as it turned out, his father gave him the name when he was still very young. And he grew up around these traditions. They live very close to the Shipibo people. And Don Agustin had always planned for his son to follow in his footsteps. At the time that I was there for that long period, he was feeling the pressure to become to do just that, to follow in his father's footsteps. But he really kind of enjoyed his ordinary life a bit too much to take that on right then. He was an avid motorcyclist. He was very popular. We could hardly walk anywhere in town without people waving to him. Um, but at the same time, he had a pretty deep knowledge of plants already. And one night we were having a little campfire right out in the street in front of his house, because the streets were all dirt roads, and they kind of served as public places. And we got a little pensive, and he was talking about how he really was not anxious to make that commitment to becoming a shaman. And we earlier that day we had run across a dog at his sister's house that had a botfly larva, which it's this worm that lives underneath the skin. and he showed me how to remove it. I've seen it done once before, but he was explaining the process. You blow tobacco over the spot, and it causes the worm to rise to the surface, and then you squeeze it. It's a little gruesome to see, but I was very interested in seeing how it was done. So, when he said, he didn't really want to become a shaman, I said, "You're already a pretty good shaman for dogs." So it'll come naturally. And a couple of years later, he let me know that he did decide to take the plunge, and he did his full 9 years of dietas, and and began to serve in ceremony with his father. He now is the primary shaman that I work with. After having worked with Don Augustine for many years now, because my relationship is so close to Viejo, he is the one that I've chosen to do most of the work with through Shamanic Voyages. Don Augustine is still nearby. He is still my venerated teacher, and he generally will come to visit us, and we'll visit him when we're in the Amazon with groups. So shortly after I first started going to the Amazon, the yeah, well, I guess there were a number of years where, of course, real life always needs your attention. So there were periods where I wasn't going as often. Um, yes, his family, raised my second child after that first experience. That required being home a lot, but I still remained active in shamanism. I built drums for people. I taught people how to journey. I continued to do sweat lodges and things like that. But at one point, my wife said Alberto Viodo is giving a talk for Palo, which is a retreat center in Western Massachusetts, which is not far from where we were at the time. And I thought, well, sure. I didn't really follow Alberto's work very closely at the time, but I knew that he was fairly accomplished, and we had a common connection through Don Ramon and Don Augustine. So I went and I listened to Alberto talk and put on his workshop, and that really made me decide that, okay, now is the time for me to really go back into the practice of shamanism more strongly. So I signed up for the Foundation for Shamanic Studies 2-week intensive, and immediately followed that with their 3-year program. And it was during the 3-year program where a fellow student and I decided to plan a trip to Mongolia and see who would come. So we did, and I took that as the door opening for Shamanic Voyages to finally. I formed a nonprofit. I took care of the paperwork and so forth, and our trip to Mongolia was the first of our Shamanic Voyages. It was a fabulous trip. It really whetted my appetite to not only continue to work in the Amazon, but also to experience as many different kinds of shamanic cultures as I could, because in the words of Michael Harner, this is our natural spiritual. Since Paleolithic times, people have communed with the spirits, and it's everyone's birthright to do so on their own. It's only through the organized religion, mixing with political power, that the natural earth-based religions were really stamped out, and people became dependent upon a priesthood or some other representative intermediary between them and the divine. Michael Harner said that it's the divine for themselves, and his practice was to enter the shamanic journey, to establish that connection with spirit. Um, so that uh, that experience in Mongolia led to shamanic voyages being started, but the experience with the foundation and the real intensity of the work made a very fundamental change in me. I have felt that I am called to medicine work. Um, so I continue to give workshops. I began to run trips to the Amazon, to the Andes of Peru, and have entertained other areas. Some work out, some don't. But at least a couple times a year, we have a week-long immersive experience within a shamanic culture. And within the purview of our topic here, we'll be talking mostly about those experiences in the Amazon, working with the plant spirit medicine.
Thank you, John, for this rich background. And I think it's also really fascinating that you have actually ancestral roots in the Navajo Dene
Mhm.
tradition and like how, this all evolved
Mhm.
into searching, for your own origin and that it's sort of turned into, iconic practices and experiences and also all around the world. And I think it's really beautiful that you are sharing all of this with us and how shamanic voyages came to life.
Mhm.
And I think it's also great since the topic for today is about plant spirits and wellness, if you would be willing to open the space for us by a prayer or an ikaro or something that you would like to share here of the plant spirits.
Certainly, I did go off on a tangent of talk there for a bit, but I would like to, if you have a candle handy, I welcome you to light it. I'm going to light this to represent the one fire, um, which is very important to shamanic. I'm not shamanic. Shamans Directory, the one fire that we gather around for sacred purpose. It's nice to have a candle when we begin to do this sort of work. Um, to open, what I'll do today in honor of the Amazon is I'm going to call in the directions with an Ikaro. I'll begin in the East through Navajo fashion. All ceremonial process begins in the East and moves sunwise. So I'll invite the six directions beginning with the East. And these are leaf rattles from the Amazon. They usually last about 2 years before all the leaves fall off from using them, but these are pretty fresh. And I'll put on original sound so you'll be able to hear it. Inti washi manko pika, inti washi manko pika, hamparata mucha kinchi, hamparata mucha kinchi. Inti washi manko pika, inti washi manko pika, hamparata mucha kinchi, hamparata mucha kinchi. Kuchurumi kaijantika, kuchurumi kaijantika, kumoi kuspai pai chanchis, kumoi kuspai pai chanchis. Kuchurumi kaijantika, kuchurumi kaijantika, kumoi kuspai pai chanchis, kumoi kuspai pai chanchis. Inti washi manko pika, inti washi manko pika, hampara tamu chai kinchi, hampara tamu chai kinchi. Kuchurumi kaijantika, kuchurumi kaijantika, kumoi kuspai pai chanchi, kumoi kuspai pai chanchi. Thank you.
That was very beautiful. Such a beautiful prayer and ikaro as well. So, yeah, after hearing all of your background, I'm sure there's so much more to, talk about all of your stories. would be great to talk a little bit further about, for those of us who are on the shamanic path, we're of course often searching for our teachers. And I know that you've mentioned like how you met your teachers and you had like this amazing journey here, um, through, books, sweat lodges, and going for meeting all of your, yeah, teachers in the Amazon, and the father and the son, and then the son of the son. So that whole experience, and it's such a, yeah, rich experience, I think, here. And I also want to really honor that experience here that you have, yeah, have gone through, and to be here where you are right now, and that you have really learned so much for over all of these years. And I know that we are today mainly talking about plant spirits and the medicine from the jungle. And also, you mentioned already about shamanic voyages, and that you bring people to different countries to really experience all of these different lineages and tribes who still have shamanism remaining in their lands as well. And that you bring people also to the jungle as well. And I ask you, why you think it's important to bring these people to the jungle to bridge basically modern medicine with also the lineage-based traditions.
Thank you. That is very important. And before I go into that real deeply, you did mention the importance of Diné tradition to me. And I do want to briefly, before I move on, because the center of my personal practice is based upon the center of Navajo spiritual understanding. And that all rests on the concept of Hojon. Hojon is a word that is sometimes translated as beauty, but it means a lot more than that. When it's used in a ceremonial context, it refers to the state of awareness that beauty and harmony surround us at all times. And that if we're not connected to that, then it's because to focus on healing or taking an action to return ourselves to our Navajo refer to the Dene is the name that the Navajo have for themselves. So I use them interchangeably. Um, the Navajo see the proper way of living to be being on your beauty walk. And that means to be aware of Hojon in your daily life. And that when people become ill or if people commit crimes, there's a healing ceremony for it. Someone who commits a crime is ill in their worldview, and there will be a healing way or a sing or a specific ceremony to address whatever needs to be done to bring a person back into their beauty walk. Now, the reason I'm talking about this now is because that is what I check in with whenever I feel like I'm out of sorts. I know what my beauty walk is, or at least at this point in my life, I know what steps I can take to bring me back in that direction. And just having that mental image of having a beauty walk as I go through life has helped me a great deal. And I've taken it to heart so deeply that it's also what I share in my medicine work when I'm with other cultures. Even though the the cultural uh, the cultural connection was broken by the Carlisle School, which is a school where children were educated to become white. The cultural connection was broken at that point. So even though things like weaving and so forth were passed down from my great grandmother to my grandmother to my mother, the a lot of the very important cultural understandings and traditions were lost through that assimilation process. This story is shared by many people, And it is really a tragedy, and it's a terrible crime that was perpetrated by both the United States and Canada on the native peoples of Turtle Island. So I just wanted to get that said before I move on with everything else. The importance of lineage, like in any tradition that has a creation story and cultural traditions, um, it's very important because the wisdom of the generations are handed down through a lineage. An outsider can come in and really appreciate a culture and really admire it and oftentimes copy some of the things that it does. But if they don't have that connection to the source of the tradition, they're never going to have a full understanding of that tradition. So as I became familiar with shamanism, and when I say shamanism, I'm thinking in the anthropological sense, a spiritual tradition that involves uh, contacting spirits for purposes of healing or enlightenment of some kind. Um, when I began to study shamanism more deeply, I really felt like if I want to dedicate myself to this kind of understanding, I really I want to do it properly. So because I didn't have a cultural connection to one that I could go to relatives for, I was kind of at sea until I found my home, and my home surprisingly was became the Amazon. I thought that I would end up, on the reservation, trying to find, lost relatives, but my life path led me there, and I was accepted, and I felt really at home there. And by recognizing that Don Augustine was a man of great uh, power and knowledge, I asked him if he would be my teacher. That isn't something that they just do because you show up. You need to establish that relationship. And he did accept me as his teacher. I mean, I did, he did accept me as his student. And one of the ways that he demonstrated that at the very beginning was he used me as the guinea pig to demonstrate how medicines worked on people. Some of them were very unpleasant, um, but it became a solid relationship that we had, and a real fondness developed, and that was what permitted me to go back. To spend 6 weeks at his home, because when I first worked with him, it was at his jungle camp. But when I went to Pucallpa, I was staying at his home, and I was with his family. We ate dinner together. I got to know the people that he knew. I got to see him as a human being, not just as a teacher. And for me, that was really good. Um, but the most important thing about having him as my teacher is that I knew somehow intuitively that it was my job to learn and not to teach. So I didn't tell him things that I already knew. I wasn't there for that purpose. I was there to set everything that I knew aside for the time being and be an empty vessel to learn what he had to teach me. And that's when he introduced me to his teacher, Don Ramon, who was a very small powerhouse of a man. If you like to read, and you can find a copy, Dance of the Four Winds shows what a taskmaster he can be as a teacher. Um, and Don Augustine was like that. He was very firm in a lot of ways, but they had this collective wisdom that reached back. You could tell, Viejo venerates his father. His father venerates Don Ramon, and Don Ramon venerated his teachers. And there was a connection to legends and stories that although a Westerner might say, well, those are just stories, or those are superstitions and so forth. there is a real art, there's a real beauty to a living lore, to a creation story that people refer to and use as a container for a lot of teachings. And you, unless you really are established with the teachers, you really are going to have a hard time finding that level of resource. Um, Also, in the tradition in the Amazon, and I believe this is true in a lot of native cultures, um, a person does not become a teacher until his teacher elevates him to that status. So, one of the things that's been happening since the ayahuasca tourism has started is many people go into the jungle 3 times and then they'll come back to their homes and say, I'm a shaman now. Uh, you know, that's not how it works. You, as I think I mentioned earlier, you need to be on dietas for 9 years before you can serve your first cup to another human being. In the tradition that I'm familiar with, um, and is for very good reason because these medicines can sometimes be very dangerous. Not just the visionary medicines like ayahuasca or peyote or huachuma. There are visionary medicines out there, but there are other medicines as well that are used solely for physical purposes or for to allow you to reach certain places of your own emotional self that are difficult to do otherwise. A lot of those medicines can be dangerous. Some people, for instance, datura is they're called to it, or datura calls them. There are other people, if they take datura, they die. Plain and simple. A very complicated relationship that we have with these medicines. And one of the fundamental things about learning plant medicine is first you have to recognize them as the plants as individuals, not what is it, but who are they, and get to know them. And in many cases, you develop very deep relations with certain plants by going through the dietas, which are long fast medicine, and you take in very little nourishment, and you spend the time getting to know that medicine very, very well, very intimately. Um, when you do that, um, I believe the chemistry changes. Not just the concept or the metaphor of the chemistry changing, but I really believe that the chemistry itself changes. That the plants be more effective, and that you can use them more to use for what condition. So there are people like Elliot Cohen who've written deeply on plant medicine, but to be engaged in a lineage that teaches it, it gives you specifics um, that have been established by the experience of people that go back generations.
Yeah, beautiful. I think it is also, yeah, a big responsibility, right? So, yeah, I cannot imagine how much knowledge they have accumulated throughout these generations about all of these different plant spirits and how they know how to effectively work with each of them. And yeah, some of the medicines are, of course, quite dangerous indeed. And so you definitely need to know and have the training or the yeah approval or permission, right, to actually do that work, to
Mhm.
do it safely for everybody. And I know, as you mentioned here as well, um, you said that yeah, you need to be elevated to become a maestro, right, to be
Yes.
able to serve. And I know you have become one, and you have be elevated by your lineage and your teacher, which is yeah quite remarkable as well, I think. And with your work also with Shamanic Voyages, you are aiming to bring the indigenous sort of wisdom and medicine together with the Western practices, right? And whilst you're, doing that and see how they can complement each other, but can you just share here a little bit more about why you think that is so important to bridge these two together?
Yes. I mentioned a little something about the dark days of the church running everything. In the late 1600s, early 1700s, we had the Enlightenment. And that's when scientific became acceptable and important to humanity really crawling out of the Dark Ages. Um, they concentrated mostly on science and consensual reality. They didn't really bring the spiritual part along at the same time. And I think that where we are right now in the world is it's time for phase of the Enlightenment. And there are a lot of groups and traditions that have prophecies that state that now is the time for us to be elevated. And it's referred to in many different ways. Some people refer to vibrations, some refer to different ways of that manifesting. Um, I, for a mission for Shamanic Voyages to make this personal, I want to help bring some of the traditional wisdom out uh, into the world that I live in the West. I'm not the only one doing it. A lot of people are doing it, but each of us are called to doing it in our own authentic way. Um, and for me, it has a few prongs to it. Part of what we do is about environmental. A part of what we do is about being sensitive to the traditions of Indigenous people and not to be disruptive. And part of it is to share the wisdom that they share with us. And Shamanic Voyages brings people into these retreats for a couple of different reasons. Usually, there are people who want personal healing. Sometimes they have an illness. Sometimes they just don't feel right, or they feel called. Sometimes people have serious emotional conditions like PTSD or chronic depression. These people come to be healed. There are also people who come because they really want to learn more about the traditions themselves. And I want to give a safe container for all of that to happen. So that's what Shamanic Voyages attempts to do, is to have a safe container for all of those reasons. Uh, I'm not, we're not the only ones doing this. There are a lot of people who are offering ayahuasca retreats and so forth. But I don't know how uh, good that always is. Uh, we mentioned this earlier before the meeting about how last night I was watching Gabor Mate, who is a very well-known trauma specialist, and he now incorporates some of this medicine work in with his psychological practice, and not just psychological, but physical healing practices. And he shared his first experience. He showed up in Vancouver to a room with 50 people in it, and they all drank ayahuasca. And then the shaman who poured it went. Everybody else went home, and that was it. That is not the way to do it, and he knows now that that's not the way to do it. But even so, he did have an incredibly powerful and long-lasting experience while with the medicine. Um, and now he shares with people how important it is to not only prepare people but also to integrate experience afterwards. And that's something that we've been doing for many years on our trips. Uh, might be anxious to arrive in the jungle and have a ayahuasca ceremony that first night because they've been looking forward to it. But that doesn't happen. First, they're welcomed to the jungle. They're received with an herbal bath, and then we dye our skin with huito, which is a fruit from the jungle that when you apply it to your skin, turn your skin blue black within hours, and it'll last for days. We our intentions uh, before we start with the work, and then when we finally do have a ceremony, uh, the ceremonies generally run from sundown to around midnight, and then you go to bed, and then first thing in the morning you have breakfast, and then we immediately go into integrating. So you might have a little bit of time to write in your journal, but people don't really have a chance to talk about it until the next morning. But when they do, they're there with everyone they were accompanied by the night before, together with the teachers. And there are more than one teacher. There's Viejo and Nina, his partner, are there. I'm there. And oftentimes we have other ayahuasqueros or other curanderos there that help to facilitate the process of the integration. And magical things happen. Really oftentimes have very they need assistance to really come to terms with and understand. Sometimes they're beautiful, sometimes they're frightening, but whatever takes place is done in a supported environment where people who frankly know what they're doing can keep everything within the guardrails. So I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, well, we
Roughly.
can go a little deeper around this because it will be interesting when you bring people on your trips, and sometimes you involve also medical professionals, right? And clinical psychologists. And you were already mentioning about Gabriel Mate, and he's also doing this work together with yeah, some other medicine, psychedelics.
Mhm.
But how do you see then yeah, how this can sort of help them in
Mhm.
your work? Like other than like yeah, how do you work with it after
Well,
an experience?
it, it's not unusual that healers would be attracted to this experience, and we've had a number of them. You wouldn't be surprised that massage therapists, or herbalists and so forth would want to come. But in time, we've had nurses, we've had medical doctors, we've had um, come mental health professionals. And if they aren't there for some personal healing of their own, they're there out of curiosity. And I really welcome them because that is one of the better ways to bring this traditional teaching to more people. Uh, you know, I can't hope to reach uh, that many more people than we can take on. They can share their experience with others, and it might spread a little that way. But people who are healers, um, I think it's really important for them to see this world, this whole different modality that works really well and has pre-existed their modern techniques. And we had one medical doctor who was with us a couple of years ago, who I already had a relationship with, working together, and he opted on the ceremony because we generally have 3 or 4 ceremonies in the time we're there for each retreat, to drink the medicine, but to attend the ceremony because that empirical science side of him wanted to compare it. Um, the way he processed things was very intellectual, and that was one of the things that I think is part of what he needed to get over for his own personal healing. But and he knows that. Um, but he really wanted to take the opportunity to see what happened without drinking the medicine. And he lost all track of time. He kept wondering if he had drunk the medicine and was just thinking about not drinking it. It was he still was with the medicine because he was in the room with all that power, and he still had I'm sure he still had it in his system, and uh, his uh, his state of awareness was altered by being in the ceremonial room, listening to the songs being sung, listening to everybody vomit because that's part of the auditory support you get in an ayahuasca meeting. Um, and it was very enlightening to him to see that kind of power. He his integration was, like a lot of people, something that he had to take with him after he returned home, and was still working on things, and we still occasionally uh, correspond. I hope he comes again. I really enjoy his company. Um, there are, I think, psychotherapists coming, or mental health professionals coming, I think is very important too, because with this new resurgence of psychedelic therapy that is beginning to happen again in the U.S., I think it's really important that people see where it came from. And I think we're going to get to this a little bit later on. The information goes both ways as well. Uh, but um, the medicine are confronting trauma that they had. Many times to some degree, they re-experience that trauma and somehow become separated from the event, and it becomes more of a memory than a condition. And through the integration process and frankly, from the brain plasticity that is activated as medicines, people can begin to form different neural pathways, actually confront outside stimulus in a different way. Um, this is something that's really important. This is something that's been discovered and appreciated by medical science as well. But the main difference between what medical science is doing and what we're doing is that we are working with the spirits of the plants. There is chemistry. There is a scientific basis for the experience people are having. That's not the whole picture. Anyone who is an animist or a shaman knows that all things have more than one aspect. There's the ordinary aspect of consensual reality. We all agree that an apple is an apple and an orange is an orange. But every single thing has a spiritual aspect as well. And the nature of an apple and the nature of an orange are something that's a little different than just the physical presence. Um, so an experience with the medicine, although there are chemical reactions taking place and there's a whole lot of science happening, there is a spiritual aspect that directs it as well and has a lot of influence on the outcome of what that experience can give you. And the uh, the Western medicine approach now, because of the nature of Western society, is that they're working with laboratory created hallucinogens primarily. And these uh, these have a very different spiritual nature. They have a spiritual nature, but they're not of the earth directly. Or plastic is organic, but it's many steps away from its original organic state. These medicines are also many steps away from their original state. So the spiritual interaction with them is more complex than having a relationship with a plant that you sing to, that you pray to as you're preparing the medicine and so forth. It's a very different thing. Even psilocybin, which people do use very successfully in the therapeutic setting, here in the U.S., it is synthetic because it needs to be dosed precisely, and they have to know exactly how much they're giving to people. And there are a lot of other compounds in mushroom than there is in synthetic psilocybin. So the experience is subtly different, aside from the spiritual difference. So there in many ways the practice of therapy with psychedelics in the West will never be the same as what we do in a traditional, but there are a lot of similarities and a lot of crossover. There are also differences in the setting as well. As I mentioned, we prepare people, we have the experience, we have integration afterwards. In in Western medicine, they prepare people with a number of sessions without the medicine. Then they have the medicine, but they also have a contract that what will happen during the session. They have music, a playlist that they can't turn. You can agree to it ahead of time and sign your name. But if you're in a session and you don't want to listen to the music anymore, they can't shut it off because you have a contract. Um, um, the uh, the the integration session in Western medicine is days later in most cases, and it's through traditional therapeutic sessions and so forth, and you're not sharing it with a group of other people. So there are some things that will always be different about the two methodologies, but there is a lot that we can learn from one another, and this is part of what uh, I want to get to about the importance of having medical people come to the jungle is they get to see the way that we do it and how important um, the structure is to the traditional way of doing things. And that can influence how they set up their methodology in the future. They can't do it exactly the same, but they can take a lot of what is important and find a way to alter it and adjust it. And the bottom line is those who come to the jungle uh, with an issue that they want to work on, and those who go to Western medicine practitioners with an issue they want to work on. There's great success in both camps, but there are very not so subtle differences in the way we get there.
Yeah.
Does that address your question?
Absolutely. I think it's a great way how you described these sort of two worlds, even though they can be both beneficial and they can certainly assist people on their healing journey. But there's definitely like kind of more like a sterile clinical setting, as well as like more the natural sort of ceremonial setting of the jungle. That's, of course, a little bit more, yeah, it's all original, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
really comes from the plant spirits and the medicine and efficacy. All of these messages come directly from those spirits, and how the people have actually sort of listened to these messages and know how to apply them on people. And it's, of course, a complete different sort of process than working in a laboratory, or working to research and measure how certain, yeah, doses just work on people, and how the effect is on some of the psychological issues and so forth. So yeah, there's a big difference between those two. So thank you for, yeah, fleshing this out a bit, or that we kind of get to understand a little bit more what those differences are. And of course, also with the Icaros, right? As you
Mm-hmm.
say, I think it's, even with ayahuasca experiences, there are people here or everywhere putting a playlist on and not really learning the Icaros or receiving Icaros directly from the plant spirits. So there's, of course, again, a gap there, like the direct connection that they have with the plants, right? So yeah, there's definitely things that people can learn from by visiting these lineages, and how this has been originally done. So thank
Yes.
you for sharing that. Yeah. And I also know that you recently attended a conference that was called Psychedelics and the Future of Mental Health Care.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share something more about that conference and how your experience was there?
Yes, I already kind of touched on some of what I learned, but psychedelic means mind manifesting. And that that whole process, it was starting, when it was first discovered, when Dr. Hoffman came up with the LSD, um, the the uh, the clinical research that was happening when the field was young was very promising, but some enthusiastic, well-meaning people really muddied the waters. People like Ken Kesey and Tim Leary, um, their hearts were in the right place, but they were very undisciplined about how they were trying to share a good thing. In clinical use, LSD was very effective in dealing with things like addiction, really chronic addiction. Um, and after LSD, there were other compounds that were, experimented with as well, including a lot of the ones that were naturally derived, like dimethyltryptamine, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca. Uh, but the just having it totally unregulated and have people doing it at parties or just you know going out and into the world, stoned, was not a good thing. And that resulted in a complete shutdown, and we lost a lot of really valuable potential for the use of treating serious conditions like addiction, depression, uh, PTSD, and many others. In recent years, it's starting to resurge, and now this program that I went to was about educating mental health professionals that this is going to be a resource that is very likely to become available soon to a lot of them, whether as practitioners or to refer clients to current practitioners. But the ones who are practicing now are doing it in an experimental way, um, uh, by and large. The laws are still pretty draconian, but the evidence of the efficacy is really there. People who are dying are oftentimes are going into sessions with psilocybin and having an experience that allows them to put fear aside and to embrace the process that they have a short future ahead of them, and to experience it fully and openly. This is something that, you know, would take years of talk therapy if the talk therapy could even get there. Um, the ketamine is being used fairly widely now, but I can't speak to that because I have no experience with that particular medicine. But as I mentioned, it is a manufactured, lab manufactured substance rather than a plant. So my methodology wouldn't really apply. I get that it has a spiritual side to it, but I have no familiarity with it. The conference I went to was great. The keynote speaker was a man in his middle, or just short of his middle life, but very, very, very brilliant. And the medicine he works with is psilocybin. And as I mentioned, it's dosed precisely, it's artificially created, but uh, he's a he's a brilliant mental health professional. He really understands people well, and he knows how, through his own personal experience when he was younger, he knows how, soul and mind opening these experiences can be, and he's using it very effectively in his practice, and he's describing to others the basic template that they're using. And I described that a little bit about having contracts and the sessions leading up to and the sessions afterward. A lot of it is based on good common sense and a little bit of traditional medicine, or the people who've been doing this underground for quite a while. Um, but that was the first speaker, and he was great. The second speaker was very left brain scientific. His medicine was ketamine, and there was very little of the spiritual, recognized or discussed in his delivery. He was very good about talking about how it worked on the brain level and everything. But I felt like there was a larger gulf between my understanding and his understanding, even more so than the first speaker. The third presentation was two women together who worked together in what was the closest thing to traditional ways. They were very upfront about spirit, but at the same time, they were constrained by the same laws that everyone else working in the field has to abide by. So the medicine that they're working with is lab created, and the uh, the just the simple worldview difference that these two women had about the way that medicine heals and the fact that the medicine itself has a spirit, that was very clear to them. So they had a consciousness that was much closer to traditional medicine. But sitting through the conference, by the end of the day, I realized what a barrier there is between traditional medicine and modern medicine in this field. They will never be able to cross that gulf, and we can never practice freely because, by FDA standards, we're all cowboys. Batches, one batch to another is a different strength. And when the ayahuasquero is giving doses to each person in the ceremony, he is making a spiritual connection to the medicine and letting that guide how large a dose he gives to people. So um, I may go and I may have a glass with this much, with one batch of medicine, and I may have one with that much with a different batch of medicine, just guided by his intuition of what that dose should be. Um, and that's something that the FDA is never going to go for. So there will be differences. The way that we would deal with people in distress in a ceremonial setting is very different than what would happen in a clinical setting as well. When we recognize that people are in distress, the first thing we'll do is we'll stand in front of them and just energetically connect with them without touching. And we will be informed by our intuition or our spirits or however you want to refer to it, how to respond. Generally, we keep touching to a bare minimum, but we will use mapacho smoke to cleanse their field. And depending upon what we feel about how this person is in distress, we'll be guided as to how we respond to it. And a lot of times, if it's someone is in a great deal of distress, a more senior curandero will recognize it and come and they will have a different technique that they'll use. Um, a lot of times, people they really want to hug or something like that, but we're not doing that because that um, experience has shown that stimulating people in certain ways is not productive for the experience. You are having this individual experience with the medicine, and you're being kept safe by the curanderos in the ceremony, and you just have to trust that the process will unfold as it should. Okay, hugs feel great. Everybody loves hugs, but that's not the place for it. Not to mention the fact that we'll get to the ethics discussion a little bit later, but there are ethics involved as well in touch of any kind.
Right.
Did I answer the entire question? I had to keep asking, but I do tend to drift away.
No, I think it's great. I also just want to say here that I do acknowledge all of the different medicines, whether they're, of course, maybe not completely natural, but there's definitely like some sort of a boom or evolution here going on, and that people also in the professional healthcare industry are, more open to that sort of idea and experimenting with it and researching it. So I think that is a positive yeah, right, movement that we are seeing here. But of course, it's very different from, yeah, the world that you're involved in, and coming to the shamanic sort of lineage-based, right, traditions. So yeah, which is also my preference, but
Mhm.
I do think it's good that all of these things are existing, but people need to be aware or conscious about what is, and discerning about what is the right way, and be taught about that as well. Yeah,
Yes, and
educate. Yeah.
yeah, and there's no one way. It's good that both exist, and the word primitive oftentimes is considered to be derogatory, but it isn't. It's based on the word prime first, and the primitive people were are much more ready to accept what science can share with them than the other way around, and that's unfortunate. It's just happening now that we're not calling people primitive anymore because of the associations of the way most people understand that word. But indigenous people and traditional people, a lot of what they know is being appreciated, but at the same time, it goes both ways too. Um, a lot of these traditional people have benefited greatly by interaction with modern science. Uh, most of the the really good shamans that I know have taken a human anatomy class. They know where the organs are. They they understand that an aspirin is one of the most effective ways to deal with a headache, or to bring down a fever. They have other medicines to bring down fever that don't have the same stomach thing. So that's probably a bad example. But there are a lot of medicines that these traditional people use, that science has brought to them, and they have no compunctions about using them if they're effective. Um, the thing is, though, the uh, the connection to the spirits of the plants they work with is very important. And that's something that we have to be very careful isn't taken away from these cultures because there are alternatives that we can, kind of push on them. Um, this isn't related to a question, but it came up the other day in a class that I'm in. Uh, when I went to Pucallpa many, many years ago, when I first came to town, I didn't go directly to Don Augustine's home because he wasn't there yet. And I was renting a little cabana on Yarinacocha, which is a lake that's right north of the city. And in the next cabana, there was a gringo, real tall guy. And I thought, great, I can speak English to somebody because my Spanish was and still is really terrible. So we chatted a couple of times. It turns out he was there as a paleobotanist for the University of Chicago, and his job was to uh, infiltrate himself into these groups, indigenous groups of people, earn their trust, give them gifts, and find out about medicines. He'd ask them about certain conditions and what they use for those to treat those conditions. He would get samples of those medicines and bring them back to the United States. And eventually, if they proved to be efficient, probably were licensed to Big Pharma, who made a ton of money, leaving the indigenous people with nothing. Um, I kind of knew that that's the way things are going, and I didn't pursue the friendship very long because, um, we both knew that we were coming from different places. But that was a long time ago, and there have been rules established since then to deal with situations like that. But this is one of the things that I think is really important to know about the medicines. They are a cultural treasure of a people, and they have a long tradition, and they belong to those people. And that is partly responsible for why I think very carefully about what medicines I bring home with me. Um, I will never pour an ayahuasca ceremony in the United States, and I can use that word never confidently because I don't believe it's proper to take that medicine away from its home. Not everyone shares that understanding or belief, but they have their own conscience and their own ethical standards, and maybe that's okay for them, but it wouldn't be okay for me. Um, bringing the awareness of the spiritual nature of the medicines to people, and even the ones that they're already using here, yarrow or echinacea or chamomile. That somebody might drink a cup of chamomile to help them go to sleep. If I can share with them how important it is to make connection with the spirit of that medicine, they will have a better result from using those herbs. Um, I really believe. And yeah, so I know that that wasn't a question, but I just did want to share that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it's quite profound the connection that you have with your lineage and with the plant spirits and how you work with them. Yeah, I think it's really great. And I know, of course, that you can actually also connect at spirit level as well, but that's a whole nother story or topic. I just want to yeah, there's so much actually to discuss as well. But since we talked a lot about how modern medicine practitioners can benefit from traditional medicine and wisdom, I know that you said that the reverse is also true, and you already mentioned about yeah, the people recognizing that aspirin works and such. But what are other ways that lineage-based traditions can sort of also benefit from the modern medicine?
Well, um, how about diagnosis? That's a good one. My personal experience, as an example, when I was first working with Don Augustine, um, I went down there with a chronic Lyme infection. I had had Lyme disease for many years, and it had been treated for about 2.5 years with antibiotics almost constantly every day. And I was sick from the antibiotics. And just before I went down there, I ceased treatment. And I had an argument with my doctor about it. She said, that if you don't take the medicine, you could die from this. And, I said, I feel a lot sicker from the medicine. So I went down there with a fairly serious condition, and the translator on our trip said, "Why don't you ask Don Augustine for healing?" And that wasn't why I went down there. I went down there out of interest, but we broached the subject with him, and he had never heard of it. He asked about some of the symptoms and so forth, and he was left kind of scratching his head, and he wanted to know how I got it. So I explained to him that it was from a tick, and I drew him a little sketch of what the bacterium looked like, a little corkscrewed spirochete. And then his eyes opened up, and he said, "Oh, okay." So he recognized it as that it was a spider disease, because the tick has 8 legs, and he drew a connection between the two. So he treated me for a disease he'd never heard of before, and it took 6 months, or he said it was going to take 6 months. It didn't actually, and it had to do with taking my medicine on a regular basis. Olhe was one of the medicines that I had to take on a couple occasions, a very strong purgative, and he made this concoction up for me that had a number of things in it, but the two things most people would recognize would be curare and tarantula. It was actually crushed up and mixed in that I had to drink, and it was vile tasting. But I took my medicine, and the new doctor that I went to, was a member of the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, so I felt like I could speak freely with him. And I told him what it was, and he, his eyebrow raised and everything. But in an examination that took place later, where they actually drew fluid from my spine, I was completely free of the spirochete that years of antibiotics were unable to cure. So you know the medicine that Don Augustine uh, gave me was almost jokingly referred to as a wide spectrum antibiotic from the jungle, and it did in fact kill the Lyme organism. I have since been reinfected because I'm outside a lot, but I now I take the short term antibiotics, and it flushes my system. But the I had had Lyme's for almost 7 years untreated, and it was very uh, recalcitrant. You know, the medicine just it would clear my blood, but then I would reinfect myself as my blood cells were being produced from my marrow because the infection went that deep. So I was very impressed. I was impressed anyway with Don Augustine, but that was a validation that came right up to Western medicine. And my doctor had to admit that they weren't able to do it, and Don Augustine was. So the diagnosis, to get back to your question, the diagnosis was helpful to Don Augustine because he was seeing a disease he'd never seen before, and having a diagnosis was helpful. So now, working with the shaman I worked with now, Viejo, his son, people come with a diagnosis, and he knows what those diagnoses are. And if he doesn't, he will read about it and learn what he can about it. He has a very deep knowledge of human anatomy and the function of all the different organs. And one of the things that we had a dentist on our last trip. One of the things that he noted is he said that the way he talks about how the organs are all working together in a symphony is not the way that modern medicine looks at it. You have a specialist for one organ, um, but the shamans will see how all the organs are working together and how sometimes one or two organs will be working to make up for the shortcoming of another one, and putting stress on someone that way. So if you can't help the organ that's not functioning really well, you can at least support the ones that are doing the job. The whole way they understand the human physiology working is much more holistic than Western medicine often will look at it. So I hope those examples are
Yeah,
sufficient.
great. Yeah, they're great. And it's also beautiful to see again, like that these two can converge together as well, the
Yeah,
modern, the traditional medicines. I just want to ask you a little bit more further about the ethics before we go into some sort of a photo slideshow. But
sure.
we already talked a little bit about, yeah, people going to the jungle and experiencing a ceremony and calling themselves a shaman when they get back. And, there's actually a lot to be learned. And as you say, there's a quite an initiatory process
Mhm.
involved before actually someone is able to serve the medicine. Um, could you share maybe a little bit the importance of, advancing yourself in a traditional lineage by practicing this medicine?
Okay. See the first part of that. Um, oh boy, I'm having a lapse here. Um, what was the first part of the question?
Well, it's more about sister, it's kind of like a trend or like a movement going on where,
Oh, the ethics. Right.
yeah, ethics where there's a lot of, yeah, ayahuasca being served, and perhaps it's not all, very ethical in a way
Mhm.
that it's done. We of course talked a little bit about that, but so why is it so important to actually really, advance yourself within those lineage traditions? Why it is so important for people to know about that?
Okay. I'm going to answer this in two parts. Um, Ethics, really important. Viejo and I were talking about uh, aspects of what we were doing that just didn't feel complete to us. So we started doing what's called curandero training, that people who've been to the jungle before who are interested in learning to become curanderos can come to this training. And a very large part of, or a very important part of that training is ethics. Um, it used to be in traditional societies that your reputation would precede you. If you were ethical and you were a good healer, people would know that, and that's why they'd seek you out. Um, if you were unethical, if you had a reputation of being, seedy or abusive in any way, that reputation would precede you too. But that's a different culture. Now people are going to seek out shamans, and they're accepting that they're authentic shamans just because people say so. That's a dangerous thing. Um, because society is different now, and we don't really have the reputations of people, well known ahead of time. Um, a number of things are happening. Some people are just out and out evil. Get that out of the way. But the large majority of these people who are presenting themselves as shamans are not necessarily malevolent. They are they see an opportunity to make some money. We're talking usually about countries that are economically challenged, and whenever anybody sees a way to live better and support their family better, they'll go after it. So if you can, if some gringos show up into town and they're looking for a shaman, and you've been at a few ceremonies, you know how to ape it. You can present yourself as a shaman and maybe get away with pouring ceremonies for a number of years, and that does happen. But people who are motivated by money are oftentimes also prone to greed, and they will compromise ethics, or they'll get full of themselves, and they'll begin to do things that an honest curandero would never do. Um, there have been a number of, well, what's most common is that they'll fleece people for money. They'll get as much money out of them as they can. They'll lead them on about things. They'll sell them things, and they'll sometimes go so far as to come to the United States or someplace else and pour ceremonies, and having all their expenses paid and getting a fat return besides. Um, it isn't necessarily that people start out evil, but greed and avarice can lead to people going down a dangerous slope. And there have been a number of sexual assaults, not just sexual assaults while someone's in a vulnerable state, but also setting up a relationship of power that gets abused. And these things are happening more and more often, unfortunately. And with celebrities saying, "Oh, everybody should drink ayahuasca," and everybody's showing up in the jungle to find a ceremony, they don't know what to look for. They don't know how important it is to check references, to know what to expect ahead of time, and be alerted that when things aren't going the way that they're supposed to go, to ask questions. Um, if anyone who says that you're welcome to come to an ayahuasca ceremony, show up at such and such a time, and we're going to serve it, that's a red flag from the get-go, because you need to have your preparation time ahead of time. You need to establish and maybe hone your intentions about what you want to accomplish with the medicine. So I'll speak to what I know firsthand. Our curandero training uh, discusses specifics about what are proper and improper. We talk about the relationship of power and how it cannot be abused. We talk about touching, what kind of touching is acceptable and what kind isn't, and under what circumstances touching is allowed. If a male is working on a female client, he needs to have another person there, another female there in the room, or the temple, or wherever they're having the session. Um, uh, the we don't talk specifically about sexual assault, because all the basics we go over make that an impossible scenario. You know that you'd be stepping out of line. But there are things that can happen that people don't know they're crossing a line until after it's been crossed. Sometimes they don't even know. For instance, someone who is in training, if they if they make a connection with someone who is there for healing, and then they use that relationship of knowing more to to become desirable to the client or whatever, they may not see it as anything wrong happening, but they are violating a very strict, you don't cross this line, with clients. You do not ever step into a personal relationship. If you feel that that personal relationship is um, destined, and you really believe it's true, then you have to break the relationship of healer and client, and allow a certain amount of time to pass before you pursue that relationship. It's very, very important for people to understand this and have that as part of their training. Um, the the people who are traveling to other countries to pour ceremonies really need to be examined. There are some genuine ones out there, but most of them, I'm afraid, are not the authentic curandero or ayahuasquero that they present themselves to be. Um, I, I really caution people, if they are drawn to this medicine at all, to really check references, ask for references. People who are authentic curanderos are not going to be offended by you asking them for a reference, and they will provide it. So anyone who says that, well, I don't have references, or tries to wiggle out of a question like that, is immediately suspect. Maybe not dangerous, but certainly not very uh, very well healed in his profession, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, I'd love to throw out a book. I reviewed a book for Indie Shaman magazine called Swimming in the Sacred. It was written by a psychologist who lives here in Maine, and it was about 12 women who are healers that work with sacred medicine, but do it underground here in the United States. This has been going on for quite some time, and these people, for the most part, are traditionally trained and have paid their dues. And it's a really interesting story about how they operate. And one of the things I found most interesting is they do share a code of ethics, and it's spelled out, and it looks very much like what mental health professionals adhere to here in the U.S., who are not underground. So I think that true healers really want to protect their clients in every way that they can, and sometimes that means protecting them from other healers.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Thank you for this recommendation to all of us. That's very helpful. I just want to ask you one more thing. Because I know that we spoke about this before as we were preparing ourselves for this interview. And that is also kind of important for all of those people who like to learn from these indigenous communities, what kind of impact that could have on
Mhm.
those. And so for those of us or people, not me, but who are serving, that yeah, these they should also support these communities in a way. So there's a, sacred exchange going
Yeah.
on. And I think it's with everything. And you also mentioned, like, how to work with plant medicine and all of these ethics that you also talked about, but also how people are harvesting medicine.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not necessarily only in the Amazon jungle, but perhaps everywhere, how we can do things more responsibly. Could you perhaps, share a little bit about that before we go into the slideshow?
Yeah, that's really important. I'll try to be concise. In the collection of medicine, um, I recommend reading some Robin Wall Kimmerer, because she is an excellent teacher about the concept of reciprocity. You never take the first plant that you see, because it might be the last. You know, there are a number of a number of things that we can do to protect these plants. And when they are stressed or threatened or endangered, um, they can also be planted, nurtured, taken care of. And the ayahuasca, for instance, that we use is it's sourced from the jungle, of course, but it's sourced by the people who know that when they take, they also have to put back and to ensure the health of the medicine and its continuance. Um, the in interacting with a traditional culture, it's really important to have that reciprocity, that giving back to them, but giving things like cell phones or GPS or things that are not part of their culture are not good, because that does disrupt their way of life. It may seem good, it may seem to be helping, but it's better to give them gifts that their neighbors might give them. Certainly, clothing is fine, because they wear clothing. Different clothing is okay. What's most important, I think, if you're in a culture that is more prime or primitive, um, to do is little as possible to introduce the outside to them. You can be there, uh, but be there to receive their wisdom and to allow them to teach you, and only answer questions that they ask you, of you. Don't uh, teach them anything. They don't ask to be taught. Um, don't wear or carry things that might be interesting or desirable for them to have if you aren't willing to give them to them, and if they're and they're not destructive to give. Um, the reason that we don't do retreats with Shipibo people is because they have their culture has already been impacted a fair amount, but they've still retained a lot of their original cultural practice. And I don't want to do anything that is going to further interrupt that. There are some people who take pride in going deep into the jungle and working with very uh, uh, I, I don't want to say a word as strong as isolated, but you know, uh, very traditional people. Um, that every time you make a contact like that, you are potentially doing violence to their way of life, even if you don't mean to. So I think it's really important to if we're Westerners and we want to go down there, it's probably best for us to work with the mestizo population who share our culture to a large degree. They share both cultures, and there's not that it's not as easy to disrupt those cultures. Although I still would want to go there as an empty vessel, be there to learn what they have to teach, not to teach them unless they ask.
Right.
Uh, does that
Yes.
fully answer? Okay,
Thank
that's about as
you.
concise as I can get.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it's amazing. So as I already sort of briefly mentioned, Crow has prepared some powerful images. So yeah, let's share those, Crow. These are beautiful images of yourself, of your lineage, as well as your group travels. And it will be really great if you can take us through us of each of them and tell a little story behind them. So I will share my screen because I think it will be really nice for all of our audience to have a bit of a glimpse or better feel about what these experiences are like. You see my screen?
Yes, just came up. This was 1998. Visiting Don Ramon. The vine that's between us, that's me in my late 30s on the left. But Don Ramon has got his hand on a grandmother ayahuasca vine. It's huge. Usually, the medicine is taken from a younger plant than that, but this is right outside his house, and he keeps it there so he can speak to it, or he did. He's passed away a number of years ago. He was born in 1899. So in this picture, he's 99 years old, and he drank ayahuasca thousands of times just in case you're wondering about health effects. And you can move on to the next one, I think. Okay, this same vine, Don Ramon is on the right, and that's Don Augustine on the left. And he was a lot closer to my age now then. Um, uh, Don Augustine was his student for a very long time. And if you look at Don Augustine's hand, his right hand is in the foreground there. You can see that it's all kind of bent up. He was once a world famous sculptor. He was a very worldly guy, even though he had the training to be a curandero. He was drawn to Western life, and a lot of his sculptures were sold in Germany and so forth. He was highly collected, and real hot shot. And one day when he was collecting a piece of wood, he was up in a tree climbing for it, and he fell. And as he fell, he went to like, just reflex, grab the tree trunk on the way down. But this tree trunk had spines that stuck out all the way down, and it tore all the tendons in his forearms. So his sculpting career abruptly came to an end. He has regained some use of his hands, but he never was able to sculpt again. So uh, this is probably about 6 years after his accident in that photo. Uh, this is uh, this is a photo of the very end of my first retreat at Yushin Taita, which is Don Augustine's camp. Yushin Taita means spirit father in Quechua. And he's proudly wearing a Kokopelli T-shirt that I gave to him there. He was very excited about Kokopelli because he plays the pan flute, and Kokopelli was playing a flute, so he was drawn to it when I was wearing it. So I gave it to him just before we left. You can go to the next one. Okay, this is a fairly recent 2018. This is Viejo in the center, Don Augustine's son, and his partner, Nina Caspi. Her given name is Andrea Marks, but Nina Caspi is the name of a medicine that helps shamans to see in the dark and improves their vision, which is very useful in ceremonies because ceremonies are held in the dark. And Viejo gave her the name of Nina Caspi because he helps her to see. They are very close, and she is a great curandero in her own right. They make a wonderful team together with both the masculine and feminine energy. And go to the next. Here's a photo. This is a few years ago, probably 2020, 2021, thereabouts. And this is a Viejo and his father, Don Agustin. You can see in the background, there's some chacruna, which is the companion plant for the ayahuasca when you make the brew. And Don Agustin is now nearly 100 years old too, and you'll see he's still generally has a cigarette pretty close by. It's the mapacho. It's different than the cigarettes we smoke up here. You can go on to the next one. This is the Amazon proper, and this is a traditional canoe that people use. It can be paddled, or they oftentimes will use these little what they call tuk-tuk motors. There's a no bend in the shaft; it's a long straight shaft with a propeller at the end. And in all likelihood, this is a family bringing some of the produce that they produced to market. This was taken just outside Tamshiaku, the village that we visit, where Viejo's camp is located. And you can go on to the next. Here's another one of those canoes. This is in from the Amazon in a little tributary. And if you see inside the canoe, it's got water in it. It's not because they leak; it's because they keep them full of water so the wood doesn't shrink and crack, which would lead to leaks later. Sometimes, if they're not going to be using the canoe for any length of time, they'll actually sink it underwater and hold it down with heavy stones or something. The location of this is at the Charapamama camp, which is the camp of Don Augustine's partner, Malena Soto. Um, and you go on to the next one. This is a little drone shot of Viejo's camp. The name of his camp is Supai Chakra, and it doesn't sound like a long name, but it is Quechua for where the spirits dance, or the place where the spirits dance. And the the building in the lower left of the photo there is where we make the ayahuasca brew, and that's on a high hill, and you can see two water tanks that provide water to the buildings below. The largest building that you see there is the temple. The right hand side of that temple is where we hold our ceremonies, and this is the camp that we take people to when we go on our Amazon trips. This guy with the big belly there, you might recognize. We are at Mama Caspi, which is the mother tree. This is a tree, or one of the trees that's recognized as a representative of the ancient trees of the forest. And we will bring groups here to pray, to ask for a healing, or ask for an understanding, or simply ask to be connected to everything in life. The tree is a very important creature of the world because it connects the earth and the sky. And the energy and the presence of these great trees is palpable. It's really uh, really something. Um, we generally take our groups, and here's another shot of a ceremony that we're doing. We generally take our groups to a Mama Caspi and a Taita Caspi, which is the father tree. The mother trees are generally in their prime of life and very, very large, one of the Wadagaspi varieties that emerge through the canopy. The Papa Caspis are generally older trees that are in decline, but still pretty grand. And we recognize them for their individual energies. You can go on to the next. This is a photo. It's a while back, probably the late 2010s. This is Viejo sitting at the ceremonial altar that is in the temple. This is where the ayahuasca is poured out to the individuals taking part in the ceremony. Everyone comes up and he will dose each individual person with their glass, and then the everyone will drink their glass together, and then the lights will be extinguished, and the rest of the ceremony will take place in the dark. Let's see. This is our most recent group. Uh, the people you see here, some of them were at the Curandero training and remained for the rest of the retreat. Some of them are there just for the retreat, and Viejo and Nina are at the center, and just to the Viejo's right, or just to the left of Viejo as you look at it, is Daniel, who is also a curandero. He is originally from Germany and came in 2009 and decided that he was going to stay in Peru and follow the curandero path. We're always very honored to have him join us in our ceremonies. His wife is just to his left. This is a healing ceremony, part of well, both the curandero training and the regular retreat. We demonstrate healing. This individual had a number of issues that he needed to have addressed, and Viejo is working on him directly as I drum on the floor next to him. And this is a common sight when you're on one of the trips. Is we do hold healing sessions for people to observe and see how things are done. And for the curandero trainees, they sometimes will actually take part in the healing as well. And this is the effects of the huito. This is a day or two after I applied the huito to my skin. Obviously, I'm still quite black. I'm smoking Viejo's pipe here in this shot, And when Viejo saw this photo, he immediately honed in on the smoke that's right behind me. He said the smoke also looked like a dragon to him. His dragon pipe represents one of his primary spirit animals. They're not all animals from real life. Many spirit animals can be mythological. They are they are genuine entities in a non-ordinary reality. And this is me blowing smoke on Don Miguel. This is to prepare him for making an offering to the tree in one of the tree ceremonies. Don Miguel has been coming on our trips almost every one since his first one in 2021, sometimes twice a year, and he is now on our board of trustees. This is Nina Cosby, and during the ceremony of the praying to the tree, we generally have someone stationed behind the person who's making the prayer or the offering to hold space and protection for them. So in this shot, you see Nina, who's praying to Mama Cosby, and I'm holding the space for her right behind her. Again, there's another healing, and this is one where the other participants are taking part in the healing. We have our translator standing on the right hand side of the photo, and he's sharing what's being said back and forth. This gentleman that you see there was just recovering from prostate cancer, and we were working to stabilize him as much as we could. And this is Don Augustine. He fell and dislocated his hip. And he's at the Mama camp, which is a pretty large camp because it's where he does, well, his woman officially owns the camp. But he's been practicing there since he let his original camp go. He is getting much older, so now he's uh, shaman emeritus. He still has all the honor, but he doesn't run the ceremonies himself anymore. He'll attend them and take part. But here he actually requested me to blow smoke on him. It's many people would call it smudging, using the smoke to cleanse and clear. And I had this is either just before or just after blowing smoke on him. He recovered fully, but he is falling more than he used to, being the age he is. He's blind in one eye now. The old vehicle wears out after a time. So this is a table where we're preparing medicine. Um, on the left, what you see there is Huayna Huayna is the wind tree. The trees of a specific species that are emergent trees. The Amazon is carpeted with trees. If you're in a plane, you fly over it, you wouldn't be able to see the ground in most places. But most of the trees are the same height. Some trees burst through that canopy and grow to be much higher. So they're like dandelions on a lawn, really. And those trees are Huayna trees because they reach for the wind. Huayna is wind in Quechua. On the right-hand side is achiote. This achiote was probably being prepared for dieteros, people who are on a diet and working with a specific plant. This particular plant is very good for the urinary tract, for prostate difficulties, for urinary tract infections, and it's also a very strong diuretic. So if you drink this tea, you can't be very far away from a place to relieve yourself because you'll be going quite a bit. A very, very effective medicine. And this is a photo of me preparing the ayahuasca vine. The vine itself is broken with a hammer and then placed in a pot, and then until it covers a layer of the bottom of the pan. And then you put chacruna leaves on top of the ayahuasca, and you can see it here. And they're alternately placed. So there's a layer of vine, a layer of leaves, a layer of vine, a layer of leaves. And to do it in an artful way helps bring some of your power to the medicine as well. This is the medicine just before the water is poured on it. And once the water is poured on it, it's boiled for usually around 4 hours, then poured off, and then more water is poured in, and that will be the brew, the second pouring. So the first brewing allows the medicine or prepares the medicine to release, and then the second one will actually be the brew itself. So for a total of about 8 or 10 hours to prepare a batch of ayahuasca. And I think the next slide will actually show it. Yeah, that is ayahuasca very close to the end of its second boil. It'll at that point we'll just let it uh, remain uncovered and let the vapor go into the atmosphere and just boil it down until it's the right consistency. It looks delicious, doesn't it? It tastes even better. This is me blessing the some ajo sacha, which is another dietero medicine. The people who will be drinking this are curandero trainees. Um, we drink this while being on a diet of rice only. So we have rice, water, and hosacha tea. Hosacha is it's a medicine that helps us with our awareness and our connection to the jungle, but it also has a culinary aspect. It's known as jungle garlic. The leaves, when broken, smell just like garlic, and it's delicious to add to soups. Um, which brings up another interesting little side thing is that although we use a lot of these as medicines to treat certain conditions, many of them are also in the local people's diets as well. And they serve a very strong practice of being preventatives um, and can be very helpful. We're all set for the next one. Yes, this is me in I'm getting a jungle sauna, is what Viejo called it. A hole has been dug in the ground like a bathtub, and I was put underneath these leaves, and then scalding water was poured in, uh, pretty much to almost cover my body. It was about at the limit of what I could stand. Um, Part of our initiations are taking ourselves to and just beyond what we can tolerate. So I was pretty well cooked by the end of this. I've also been plunged into in ice water, um, and I think Vieja might have made that one up just to toy with me because I know that's not a traditional jungle product. Anything? Here we are instructing our second group of dieteros. These people were there for the retreat, but they chose to be on a dieta for 7 days while they were on their retreat. So they had the very limited nourishment of just rice as well. Sinchi Pachana was the medicine that they were working with on this particular diet. And we are giving them instruction there, and you can see the people from the curandero program are along the sidelines. So they're getting specific instruction. And is this our last slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is a very important part of the ayahuasca follow-up. This is taken during our integration ceremony. Each person who was part of the ceremony is given the bacola, which is like a staff, and the the purpose is to be used like a talking stick. When you have the bakola, you have the right to be heard. Anything you wish to say, you can speak freely from your heart, and no one can interrupt or respond unless they're asked. And that's how each person shares the experience of the ceremony with the others. And once they're done, then the the masters will make commentary about what they had shared. And if someone else wants to speak that's in the group, they can signify it, but they need to be called on in order to share. At this point in our integration period, Don Augustine and Donna Milena came to visit us, so we were at a little bit of a break in the ceremony here. Once again, you see this man in nearly 100 years old, and he's still smoking his mapacho. So, I think that is the end of our photos.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that and all of the stories behind it. I think it's wonderful and really gives us a better sense of what it is like to be in the jungle. So thank you. And also just to say here, because I asked John the question, all of the participants, they agreed to be on the photo. So otherwise we would not
Yes.
be sharing this publicly. So just so you know.
Yes, that's
Um,
very important. When people come on the trips, well, the first thing they have to do is they have to contact me and express their desire to go, and then we have a an intake or an interview. And I'm not going to say unfortunately. Sometimes it's necessary to tell people that it's probably not a good fit, and that I feel that it wouldn't serve them to come on our trip. What I don't say is sometimes it won't serve the rest of the people if they come on our trip. I need to make that evaluation because many times for things like this, people want to come so they can tell everybody what they know. You're not there to join us to teach anyone. You're there to learn. Sometimes people might have other reasons where it wouldn't be safe. If I suspect or if my intuition tells me that there may be a psychological reason that they shouldn't come, there are certain psychological conditions like schizophrenia or uh, bipolar that make it potentially dangerous. Bipolar would be possible, but it would there would have to be a deeper discussion about their condition in preparation to go. Um, uh, People who have anger management problems. This is something I've become more sensitive to because I hate to give up on somebody, and people who are making progress, I want to work with them, but sometimes people cannot control their rage, and it makes it feel unsafe for others. So that's a situation under which, if you can't contain your rage episodes, then this is not appropriate. So people who have a chronic depression, if they're on SSRI antidepressant medication, they need to contact their doctor and go off of it under their doctor's supervision before they can do this, because SSRI and dimethyltryptamine can have an interaction that is sometimes uh, very serious. People have died in ayahuasca ceremonies. Um, Almost without exception, though, it's because the person was not prepared properly beforehand. Most of those cases, people are on medications they shouldn't be on. Sometimes certain high blood pressure medications are also not indicated. So we need to be very careful to keep people safe. Um, and let's see, uh, where was I going beyond that? Uh,
I think you've said it all.
I think I've said it all and more, probably.
Of course, there's a lot more to share about this topic, but
Mhm.
since we're, a little going over time, I just want you to have the opportunity to share a little bit about Shamanic Voyages, which you already shared a little bit about, but also about any upcoming offerings, because people who are here right now or listening later might be interested to know more about your journeys.
Okay, thank you. I will take that opportunity because our next trip is our Andes trip, the Andes of Bolivia and Peru. And this trip will be roughly following Manco Capac, who was the first Inca who arose in Lake Titicaca and then founded the city of Cusco. So we're kind of following that trail, but along the way, we'll be looking at a lot of pre-Inca sacred sites. We'll be working with some of the local medicine people, both in Bolivia and in Peru. We'll finish up the trip in the Cusco Sacred Valley area, where we will have two options. One will be a Huachuma ceremony, which is a medicine ceremony with Don Carlos, who is a dear friend and an Alto Mosaic. And the other option is to go on to Machu Picchu. I know it's on a lot of people's bucket list. I don't go there anymore because it makes me sad. But it is still a beautiful place, even though it's so tightly regulated. And if you're interested in going on this trip, we're going to be closing the registration early because Machu Picchu requires 3 months advance to reserve a ticket to go. So for those going to Machu Picchu, they have to register sooner rather than later. Our uh, our next Amazon trip will be the last week of March will be our Curandero training, and the first 2 weeks of April will be our regular MOTA retreat. And MOTA stands for Magic of the Amazon, but we shorten it in written language. And that retreat will be our common retreat for 2 weeks. So
Great.
yeah, and if people want to go other places, we entertain other destinations, or I can connect you with a person who's vetted who goes there. My wife Allison will be going to Mongolia with Celine Rocha, who's part of Shamans Directory as well. Um, and there are other places as well and partners that we have. So always happy to make referrals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Crow.
Very
And
welcome.
I want to ask you two questions that came up in the group just to
Mhm.
honor them as well here. Um, so the first one is, how do you feel about the use of the word psychedelic? Does it take away the sacred aspect of the work?
Um, I feel that it puts an image in people's minds that is not necessarily in harmony with the medicines we use. But the word psychedelic means mind manifesting, so it's not really a bad thing. A lot of people who do this work now prefer the term entheogen, which basically means psychedelic being used for spiritual purposes. So that narrows it down.
Thank you for giving
Hmm.
this clarity. Yeah, I know that people can have psychedelic experiences, so personally, I don't think it's wrong to use that word, but it's good to put it into perspective as well.
Yes.
And certainly, it's a sacred experience. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Can you also speak a little bit about your understanding of how plant spirits feel about arriving at a gathering where they are being used or abused non-ceremonially,
Um,
or
I
especially
believe
marijuana, so that they're consumed non-ceremonially, and how plant spirits, whether they can arrive into these
I,
places.
I think that the nature of specific plants is different. Some plants are very giving and very nurturing, and some are, I think, somewhat martyred when they're misused. But they can also mete out punishment themselves. Ayahuasca is one of those, I think, that if it's used without respect, sometimes people can have very disturbing and violent uh, visions and be left not feeling very good. So it's not one to toy with. And while I have a moment to say it, peyote should not be used by anyone but Indigenous people who have a long history with it. Even going as a guest is further stressing this very important medicine. Um, Many things are being used for well-meaning purposes, but not in an authentic way, and it's it's really putting traditions in danger by making things disappear. Peyote is very stressed, very threatened at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Crow, for answering these questions from the audience as well and for sharing this, yeah, amazing experience here in our circle and for all of your wisdom and all of the stories and also teleporting us a little bit into the jungle as well. And that was really amazing. And thank you for everything. Also, your support within Shamans Directory is really much appreciated from us. And it's been an absolute honor to have you here with us to share this experience here together.
And thank you very much. I really appreciate what you have done to really protect the integrity of Shamans Directory. It's a really great organization, and I'm very pleased to be associated with it.
Thank you so much. So to all of our viewers here, participants, thank you so much to for your presence here, to be with us here. And as I mentioned before, this video or recording will be up on YouTube about within 24 hours. So, and also all the links that have been shared in the chat will also be in the description. So you can always go back to it as well and learn more about Crow and his offerings. So thank you again for joining us and sharing this sacred space together. This was our session. We're closing it right now, and I wish you all a really beautiful and nourishing weekend. And we look forward to welcoming you again at our next Shamans Directory live events. So bye for now until we connect again.